Hi, and welcome to Real Trail Talk. I'm Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mark Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 29. We have a very special one for you this week. We are talking about the Three Capes track in Tasmania, which I've just completed with the wife of Pi. Welcome, Caris.
Thank you.
So we did this as the lodge walk, but obviously there's quite a few ways you can do the Three Capes, so we'll get through those options today.
So maybe before we talk about the track itself, let's talk a little bit about the history of it and where it sits. So basically it's one of Tasmania's 6 great bushwalks. It's a project that they did a scoping study for, and they decided that this was a project that had the most potential. And originally it was going to be a slightly longer walk, but now is a 4-day trail that starts at Port Arthur.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a misconception, the Three Capes, because you don't actually go to Cape Raoul, which is on the other side of the little inlet there that leads to Port Arthur. But from what I've heard, they decided a 4-day journey would be the better option to try and bring in tourists, because 4 days is obviously a lot easier to get if you work than a full 6 days. But it's a bit of a shame that they haven't offered the full 6-day experience to those who want to do it. And especially when it's not a cheap hike to do. You're not just going to decide I'm going to do it next weekend. You need to book well in advance, even if you're just doing the self-guided tour.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe one day they'll do it.
Yeah, I've heard some of the old locals who, they don't like the track because it's so well constructed, and they're like, oh no, it has to be rough, and they derogatory, they sort of refer to it in derogatory terms as the 2 out of 3 Capes track. But I think it has been a huge success. It's definitely done wonders for the area's visitorship.
And it's not like you can't get to the 3rd Cape. If you really want to, you can tack on Cape Raoul as a day hike after you finish. So yeah,
they did build the Cape Raoul and Shipsterns Bluff section, they did a day hike there to the same standard as the 3 Capes. So that's a good way of, if you want to see all 3 Capes, you can.
And then, talking about trail construction, it was just amazing how well constructed it was. I think it took 5 years for them to finish it. And it's not easy terrain that they're cutting track over, and a lot of the rocks and everything are hand placed. And there's obviously a lot of stairs going in because you're climbing up cliffs and down cliffs, and they've done a really good job, and it is at a standard that you'd be happy to pay the $550 entry fee.
Yeah. So the 3 Capes in the 6 great bushwalks of Tasmania, as the government like to call it, this is probably seen as I know that the idea behind this was to create something that was an entry-level walk that most people could do, and sort of fits nicely in their suite of tracks. So it's near the overland end, maybe a little bit easier than the overland, probably easier than the overland.
A lot easier than the overland.
Working up to something like the South Coast track, which is their extreme sort of difficult end of that. So with the track, tell us a bit about the experience, I guess, starting from day one. Where does the track starts at Port Arthur?
So our day one, we arrived in Hobart, and we got the full dress down of what's to expect, and a check through of the gear and everything. And then we got driven out to an area near Port Arthur, which was Stewart's Bay, and we had a private ferry take us across, I guess, the bay or the inlet and over to Denman's Cove.
So being a private ferry, is that because you went with this luxury
Yeah, so
tour?
I have to preface everything with, we did the 3 Capes lodge walk, which is different to the 3 Capes track that you can do. So it's not too much different, and we'll try and relay it as the 3 Capes track, because that's what most people will do.
But there is quite a price difference, isn't there?
There is. So I mentioned $550. That's for the 3 Capes track, just buying the pass and staying at the huts that they have there. And we did the lodge walk, which was a little bit more expensive, as we had guides and we had upmarket lodges with wine and all meals prepared for us. But it was the same very similar experience, and we had to carry our packs with our clothes and meal and lunch for the day and water and everything. So it's not like we were having porters or Sherpas carry everything for us. It was still, what would you say, 6 to 9 kilos worth of gear?
It was heavy for me.
Yeah.
Now, because Caris, you're not really a big hiker.
No, definitely not. And my fitness wasn't at what I had hoped it would be at by the time I left, because I got sick before we left. But it was still a bit of a challenge for someone like me.
Yeah.
Even though it was a walk in the park for Mark.
Right.
But I mean, it's not like we were there with adventure enthusiasts.
Well, no, we were easily half the age of everyone else in our group.
Yeah.
So the average demographics are probably about 60
Yeah,
higher?
like your baby boomer retirement age. I like to joke that we were there to provide diversity to the group.
Okay.
So instead of rich old white people, we were young poor white people. But one of the guides did say she had a group of doctors come through that were in their 30s. So it's not like you're going to get, a group of 60-year-olds every single time.
Yeah.
So you never know who you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
But day one, so we got the ferry over, and it was not a private ferry. I think it's one you can book yourself if you really want to. And the landing point for both the Lodge Walk and the Three Capes track is Denman's Cove, and it's a very sheltered bay. There's a beach there that has a lot of nesting birds, so they ask you to stay on the compact bit of the beach. But it was a lovely trip over, and it's a nice way to start, just kind of being dropped off like you're on Survivor, and here's your
Yeah, there was
your
no
beach.
Jeff Probst, unfortunately, but I do believe that ferry was actually custom made for the trip, and if you do the normal track walk, you do get to do a bit of a tour of the area by boat, whereas during the Lodge Walk we kind of had a more direct route, which was a bit unfortunate, to be honest.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I have heard that in the standard ferry that goes around, they take you so that you can see Cape Raoul. So you go, aha, there's the third Cape.
Yeah, you're not going to see it. You have seen it. Yeah, and there's actually a little cove near Cape Raoul where they have the fluorescent, or the bioluminescent, I don't know what you call them.
Plankton?
Yeah, it was plankton that you can see at night.
Oh,
That
cool.
would have been cool to see, and if they tack on the 6 days, then I hope they add that as an experience.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
We landed at Denman's Cove, and day one is only 6 kilometres, I believe. Yeah, 6 kilometres, so it's not a long day, and by the time we got out, it was about lunchtime, just after lunchtime.
Yeah, we had lunch not long after arriving.
So you kind of walk along a creek line from the beach, and then that takes you to a safe point where you can enter the forest, and it's dry sclerophyll forest is what they call it. It's pretty much like the eucalypt forest we get in WA.
Yeah.
And there is a nice art installation at the start to take some photos with and say this is a Three Capes track, and
Cool.
everyone got really excited about that. Yeah, it was a lovely start, but I was a bit worried because I wanted to photograph this trip for the website, and everyone was just bottled up, and it was a really flat walk along the kind of ridge along the coast. I was a bit worried I wouldn't get any photos, so I was hanging back as much as I could to try and keep the photos empty of people.
We spread out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think because we had a lunch stop at Surveyor's Cove, which is a little bay, and it's a very rocky bay, and lunch there, and that was a nice stop for an hour. And then after that it got really, really not steep, but it was the first hill of the day, and I think that spread everyone out, and I was kind of a bit more relaxed about what the pace was going to be like for the group.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a benefit having the older crowd, because it allowed Mark to move a bit slower and take all his photos without worrying about interrupting people who were trying to do it super fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was towards the back of the group most of the time. I must have thought this young whippersnapper's not up to the job, but yeah, I just wanted to enjoy it at my own pace.
Yeah. So this would have been your first day of hiking in Tasmania?
Yes.
Yeah. And how did you feel?
I don't know, it didn't feel like Tasmania, because Tasmania to me it's the temperate rainforest and the mountain peaks and everything, and having read your blog, seeing all of those pictures from the overland and the walls of Jerusalem, this was very, very different walking. It's coastal walking, it's through dry forest. It was just a little bit different to the Tasmania I'd been expecting, but it got a lot better as the days went on.
Awesome.
Yeah, so from Surveyor's Cove, went up the hill, and I mean, it's a bit of a so-so day in terms of what you'd expect.
It's designed to ease you into the walk, I think, and the days do get progressively harder.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an ease into it.
Yeah, and one thing that I did enjoy was the wildflowers, which I wasn't expecting a lot of in Tasmania. I'm not sure why, but being spring, there was a good variety, and yeah, there's lots of dogwood around and yellow peas, and it was nice walking.
Speaking of dog, I think we should probably mention to listeners that the sort of you hear in the background is our extra special guest, Sadie, who happens to be here as well.
Yeah, so Donovan and Alyssa kindly looked after our 2 dogs while we were away, and we thought we'd bring them over for a little bit of a hello and a thank you.
Yeah.
So if you do hear whining, it is Sadie being a muppet. Yeah, so, I mean, day 1, not very long, and it's not very far until you reach Surveyor's Hut, which is the public hut. And, I mean, I'd heard how good the quality of them were, but to actually see them in person, you're like, wow. And it's like, that's not even the one we're staying at.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of a weird moment because you could see the hut, and it's kind of 4 or 5 buildings, and there's decking everywhere, and you're walking a lot of boardwalk in Tasmania, so you kind of, you can see it stretched out along the boardwalk, and they have a nice view over, it would be looking towards Cape Rail, but I don't think you can see it from this hut. And it's kind of weird walking past and everyone's staring at you. They're like, oh, there's the rich people walking by.
Judging.
Yeah.
But it's not like, I mean, these are all, compared to other huts anywhere in Australia, these are probably luxury huts.
Yeah, so these are brand new, pretty much, huts. And I think we didn't get to look inside because we didn't want to be too rude, but I think all the sleeping mats are there, so you don't have to carry any of that. There's a ranger on site. You've got kitchens, toilets. I mean, they're really well kitted out, and even like the recreational areas are quite well done. They've got deck chairs and looking over the view. It's really luxury, and I'd say I'd be happy to pay the $550 to do this in the future.
Yeah, it takes out any doubt going, especially for unseasoned hikers thinking $550, it's a lot. But when you see the facilities that they've built and think, wow, this is a government built facility, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And it really validates the price that you're paying.
So I think that's the thing that with this particular hike, is that you can either see it as a very expensive public hut walk or a very, very cheap luxury walk, because the facilities are heading towards the standard of luxury while not being extremely expensive. So that, I think, makes it quite attractive to a lot of people who maybe, as you say, are not experienced hikers and think, wow, that's a lot of money, but you're getting, you're getting quality for it.
Yeah, definitely. And then you have to also consider that unlike, the long drops that we have on the tracks here, all the waste is actually flown in and out by helicopter. So that adds a lot to the cost of running the track as well. Yeah.
That's something that I really like about Tasmania, is that because they chop everything out, you don't see roads and was that the case with the 3 Capes? You don't see many roads?
I don't think we saw any.
No, there's no roads on the actual peninsula, and I mean, you've got not that many tracks either. I think there was one point where I could see a track and I was like, oh, where does that go? And you kind of, once you look at the map, you realise it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yep.
So it's wilderness, and the cost of everything keeps it as a wilderness experience, which I enjoy.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah. And so Surveyor's Hut, or Cove, which is where we stayed, it's a little further on from the public hut, and it's kind of a weird thing where the guide stands on the track and then points you off into the bush. There's no signs to say lodge this way. It kind of felt a bit naughty. It's
very secretive. It's very, this is only for the special people. Yeah. A secret little track, and it is very purposely hidden, I think, to keep it private. And likewise, I think the lodges, part of the deal I think the company has with the government, they had to make sure that the lodges were well hidden as well, not only for their privacy, but to sort of protect the environmental aspect of everything and make other people not see, oh, there's a hotel over there.
Yeah.
And it's not like it was a hotel. It was similar style of construction to the public hut. It's just that it was maybe a little better kitted out. So
and more architecture, I think, was involved in the design of it as well, where you're it's built on the side of a cliff, so you really do feel more immersed, I think.
And there was like the main building, which is your kitchen lounge area, and that had glass windows that could open up, which was handy on the first day because it was a bit warm. And then there was a separate little kind of, I don't know, described as like a little bunker hideaway.
A lounge pod, I think they referred to it as.
A pod, looking over towards Cape Royal.
Yeah, that had the best view, I think, of the two.
Yeah, and the guides. We had 3 guides on the trip, and they all did their job. And we got dinner that night, which was a tagine. I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we had a tagine.
And you got a selection of Tasmanian wines and beers, and it's very pleasant.
And these amazing biscuits that they have custom made, and you cannot buy them anywhere, and it's very upsetting.
Caris's favourite part of the trip was these biscuits.
You had them to look forward to every tea break, and every when you got back to the lodge, they were there, and they're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the rooms are actually, because I'm looking here at the website, and the rooms look like they're actually proper beds and proper.
Yeah, so because you never know what you're going to get with the guests that are staying. So there's 2 single beds which are quite large, and then they also can be combined into. It felt like a king size bed.
Yeah, I think it does work out to a king.
Yeah, I didn't get a knee in the back during the night, so it must have been king size. But I mean, they're not very large rooms.
No, they're very small. But at the entry as you go into the rooms, they've been set up with their inbuilt shelving to hold your pack and your shoes, so it's very custom designed to suit the purpose of why you're there.
Yeah, I just have to read how the website sells the accommodation, because it's just great. True shelter, something that gives protection and refuge, simple and sustainable, clean and comfortable.
And that's essentially what they were. I mean, you didn't really feel like you're on a hike, and a couple of the times during the morning I woke up and I was like, no idea where I was, and I was like, oh, I'm on the 3Ks. They are very nice. And then the the toilet shower block they're all long drop kind of into pods that get flown out. But the first night there was an experimental shower. And I didn't use it, but you did use it.
I did. I think so. They had 2 of the regular mist showers to help reduce how much water you use. And then the third shower, I believe, was somewhat recycled.
Yeah.
And it involved a sensor that you had to put your hand over in certain formations, and then it would refill, and then you kind of had to figure out how to work it magically without any instructions. But it was an experience in itself.
Yeah. It was nice to have a shower. And the misting showers, you'd think, oh no, they're not going to be that great, but there's pretty much the same as just having a normal shower. Yeah,
and we would encourage not to use any of our own products because they want to keep it as low impact as possible. So we just had a very ecological soap that we were provided, and that's what we had to use for everything. They didn't want you to bring your own shampoos and soaps so that you weren't polluting anything with what was going down the drain.
That's really good, because I think sometimes even those eco-wash soaps are not correct. They don't really actually do the job, and yeah, so that's good that they've got the environmental management side.
Yeah, they're very, very big on making sure the leave no trace philosophy.
Okay, so moving on from there to day 2. So this is one of the days where it's a bit more substantial.
Not really.
No, not.
It's kind of a weird trek. Is if you start off really, really, I suppose it's okay in a way, but you start off really, really short, and it was 6Ks, and then this is only 10.5Ks. And then, day 3 and 4 are quite longer, so you kind of ease yourself into it. But it's still a very enjoyable day, and from where we were staying at Surveyor's Cove, you could actually see the first peak of the day, which was Arthur's Peak.
Which was substantial for me.
Yes, it was the first kind of challenge that you had on the hike. And it was an introduction as well to some of the alpine plants that you would see in Tassie.
Oh, cool.
Even though it's not really too far up. It's about 320 metres above sea level.
Yeah, but when you're saying that you're starting quite low, would that be the case?
Yeah, I think we were maybe 100 metres above sea level. It wasn't a terribly difficult ascent. I mean, it's not like, Bluff Knoll or anything. But it was still quite challenging, and a good kind of way to get the blood working and flowing after a lovely night at the lodge. So it's open grassland to start with, and
button grass,
a little bit of button grass, and well protected as you're on the boardwalk. And unfortunately you didn't get to see any wombats or wildlife, although we forgot to mention we saw a Bennett's wallaby near the public hut on day 1 that kind of stayed still and let everyone photograph it.
Yeah, apparently there's a joey, but we didn't get to see it, but it was quite tame or unscared.
Yeah. So once you pass through the open plains, it's straight into the forest again, and we were warned that there was a lot of steps, and I started off counting them just to have a little fun with Caris. It's an easy-ish hike up the hill, and it gets you closer to the coast. So where we stopped for morning tea, I don't think was the height of Arthur's Peak, but it was a little viewpoint looking back over one of the cliffs, and it was quite spectacular.
That was a good part about day 2, as we sort of got into those sort of cliff, walking on the tops of those cliffs, and like once we reached Arthur's Peak, we could look back on it and see, what we just done. It was really cool to see that and see the peak rising above all the smashing waves and things.
Did this have any, because I'm guessing that being a peak that there maybe were some seats or something, did they have any of those like fancy benches
there's
at this area?
I can't actually remember on Arthur's Peak, but there are a lot of like public art installations along the way, and everything kind of has a name and a story, and it's quite interesting. It keeps you engaged with the landscape, and every now and then if you ask the guides, what does this mean, they'll be able to tell you. And I think on this section leading up towards Arthur's Peak was kind of a reference to getting into the Alpine section. And this is where we saw your favourite plant, the cheeseberry.
The cheeseberry.
Which is kind of like a purple berry, and it was quite reminiscent of what Caris looked like that day because it was a bit overcast and drizzly. So she had her
purple rain jacket on.
Purple rain jacket that she borrowed, and if she zipped it all up and put the hood on, she looked like a little cheeseberry.
But they were very cool, very bright purple to magenta.
Are they edible?
I'm not sure. We tried to find cheeseberry gourmet dishes but we couldn't find any.
Another thing to note about the track is that when you're doing it as a public walker, you get this amazing guidebook that's actually put out by their wilderness government. Tassie Parks, and it actually has lots of really great images of all the wildlife and the flowers and things that you see, and it's really well made. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. Which was a little bit disappointing. One of our guides had a copy, but it was really great for the public walkers to be able to reference what they see on the track.
So we paid a little bit more and we got less.
in that regard.
In that regard, yeah. And also one of the really interesting plants was the pineapple candle heath, which was, I think it's referred to as like a dragon plant, but it's like this cool spiky, kind of almost Banksia-ish type.
Yeah,
plant.
Like if a Banksia and a dragon fruit had a baby that was really big and brightly coloured.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
That sounds cool.
Yeah. And we kind of did feel like in an alpine region a little bit because you're walking up through cloud forest, as they call it, and it was a little bit misty, a little bit rainy.
We were there on very ideal temperatures, though. I think it wasn't too windy, it wasn't too rainy, it was quite mild for typical Tasmania weather. So unfortunately, in that aspect, we didn't get too many clouds in our cloud forest. But I think most people would get to experience that on their days there.
And then walking down from Arthur's Peak, it was kind of an easy-ish descent. A lot of it is on boardwalk instead of stairs, and that made it a lot easier. And the wildflowers on this side of Arthur's Peak were a lot more prevalent and, a lot easier to spot as well because you're on the boardwalk a little bit raised and you can just look down at each little section. And then it opens up quite a bit and you get a lot more coastal views. But there was a little bench. It was actually quite a big bench and it was like a big leaf or a sail. Something like that. And it was really open. You could look back towards Arthur's Peak and then also on to where you're going to go for the rest of the day. Yeah,
I saw a few of those benches on the Cape Raoul track, and I think that there's a certain amount of interpretation that they accept. So it can be a sail, it can be a leaf.
Yeah, I think those are all stipulated on that little guidebook that you get. They've all got a name, and I think for the public walkers, it gives you a bit of a checkpoint to go. Oh, I've passed. One of them on one of the days was called Sex on the Cape, and some of them have really interesting names, which was a reference to how one of the plants actually reproduces,
right?
Which was really cool. But yeah, on the little map that the public walkers get, that has all of those, so you can all go, oh, we're coming up to this one, or it's kind of a good little thing to look forward to, that little art installation or seat, and see what they've tried to do with this one.
Because I think Tassie has a policy where they have to have public art because with any new building or any construction, so it's a nice thing. You can see there's this, a really strong support for the arts in Tasmania, and it's good that they have this stuff on the track.
And it's good to link back to, to draw you out of just it's a nature hike. Here's something that someone's created and, get a little bit of a pause and food for thought, as they say.
And, and because of the remoteness, you don't have the issue of graffiti like you often do on tracks here.
Yeah.
Indeed. So from there, kind of back into the forest, and it is very dry forest here compared to normal Tassie forest. And this is when the sun came out, because I remember we had to stop, and we were already at the back of the group to put sunscreen on, but that did not last very, very long. And then we had lunch, which was in kind of a little bit of a wetter area. You don't remember having lunch?
I don't remember having lunch.
I think this is where you had to use the off-track facilities, as they say. And
yes.
You were quite nervous about doing that.
Well, the problem was the area that we had stopped, it was very thick scrub. And the original day they said that we should try to go 100 metres off the track, which I don't know how that's possible. And you could barely get 2 metres off the track because it was just so thick. So it was something that you try to avoid at all costs. But I survived.
Yeah. And the area was it was a lot more paperbarky in appearance and very, not swampy, but it kind of felt that way, leading towards the Four Ways Junction. So it's not a perfect circuit, the Three Capes. So this is where, as it says, 4 junction or 4 tracks meet. So you've got the old Cape Pillar track, which you can walk in either direction, and that's also a good public access track. And then the way that we had just come, which is only one way from Denman's Cove, and then there's the Cape Pillar track, which takes you out to Cape Pillar, and then the Three Capes track, which we'll experience on day 4, takes you kind of towards the third Cape, which was Cape Hoy. So yeah, as I said, 4 junctions, and we're going down to Cape Pillar. And yeah, again, we got through wetter forest, which I quite enjoyed, because this is what I've been looking forward to in Tassie, is seeing the big stringy barks and kind of a bit more of a lush kind of feel to the forest. And there's more public art, which was really cool. And then the final destination for the day is Munro Hut. And this is probably one of the better public huts. And it's right on the Munro Bight, and there is a little boardwalk leading out towards views over the Bight, and I'd say probably better views than what we got in our lodge.
Yeah, this one, it was really spectacular. You really felt like it could have been our lodge that we were arriving to. It was just as good.
And we actually had to walk through this hut to get to the track that led down to ours. But yeah, it was kind of cool, and they had interpretive signage there, so you started at one point in front of one of the buildings, and you kept walking along the pathway, and at each interval it gave you the length of each animal. So you got seals and sharks and everything, and then the blue whale was 30 or 40 metres down the path, and you could look back and say it's a big animal. Yeah,
we saw some, not native, but some kookaburras that were there, and the next day when we came back through, the ranger was there and said that they had a bunch of nesting blue fairy wrens, or splitted reds as they call them over there, right next to the hut, so you can really experience the wildlife while you're there.
I mean, it just looked like a cool area to stay, and there's lots of room everywhere to roam around. And
yeah, and also like areas where you could come together and chat with other walkers, sort of those communal kitchens and little rest areas where everyone could have a chat at the end of their day. That was really nice.
Did you get to chat with any of the
plebs?
I didn't want to say that, but yes.
And we're just being facetious here. Yeah. I actually think that way.
We were on that day though. We were I think everyone was pretty keen to get back to the accommodation, but on the next day when we followed through, we stopped and chatted to the ranger about a few things.
Okay.
So yeah.
Because I remember on the overland we had a few of the luxury hut people come to see how the other half live, and it was cool. And they were really interested to have a look at the huts and see what the facilities are like.
I mean, if we weren't all wearing the same packs and obviously had guides with us, I mean, we could have been anyone.
I think the size of our pack would be a bit suspicious. People go, oh, gee, they're not very well prepared.
Not really. Like, they were big. They were 50-litre packs, and having no sleeping mat to carry, you really only need to carry food and sleeping bag.
But then our poor guides with their gigantic packs holding things like the first aid kits and extra supplies that they had to bring.
Stoves and everything, So the lodge is actually a little further down, and it's a bit of a weird one, and I think on day 3 especially, one of the ladies was coming back to the lodge, and she missed the turn off because it's really hard to see unless you know where it is. So kind of the gatekeepers again stood on the track and pointed us up, and it was a fair hike up the hill.
It was a very it was a zigzag, so it was a bit of an ascent when you've had for some of us a long day. So that was probably that was the most punishing part of the day, I think, was going up this zigzag to go up this hill where the lodge was tucked away again.
Yeah, because it's like at the top of the hill and there's just these switchbacks and you're just like, is this the last one?
You can't see the lodge because it's so well hidden, so you don't know how long you've got to go until you finally see the lights start to appear, and it's like, the lodge.
But then finally get there, and it's laid out a very similar style. In fact, it's exactly the same, just positioned differently. So the buildings are the same, but this one has an extra building for the spa treatments that you can get. And there was an extra lady there who had baked us a really nice cake for that day.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and she does all the spa treatments which you can book, which I think are like $90 or so for half an hour.
So that if you're really stressed out from this extremely challenging walk,
you can
it's about 4 or 5 treatments you can select from.
Yeah.
I didn't partake this time, but maybe another trip.
No, there was a few people that did it, but it just kind of, I don't know, I think nature is relaxing enough that you don't need a back massage at the end of a day, especially when you're only carrying 7 or 8 kilos on your back.
Yeah, and I think the lady who was doing the spa treatments and also helped out with some of the other things, as all the guides are sort of multi-skilled, but she actually, unlike the other guides who sort of come with us and follow the same trail we do, she stays there, I think, for 9 days at a time.
Yeah.
So there's many days where she's between people. She's just enjoying this luxury accommodation by herself and getting paid. So why not?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember, what did we have for dinner that night? It was a sweet potato something.
Was that the pie?
Yes, it was. The sweet potato and leek
Yeah,
pie.
so just to preface, we had a pescatarian food option. So everyone else had, I think, lamb pies and we had a mushroomy, pumpkin-y pie, which was delicious.
And I think the views from the main lounge area weren't as great because you had trees blocking the way, but the separate little pod, which was a lot bigger this time, was quite a lot nicer, and you had...
If you could figure out how to get inside it.
Yeah, because it was just basically a giant wooden... not entranceway, but just kind of wall, and you had to grab onto it and just push it apart.
Yeah, find the secret sliding door, which was cool once, but it was a bit daunting at first. You're like, I don't want to be the person who's trying to open it the wrong way and everyone thinks I'm an idiot.
But one thing that kept happening is they have dinner at sunset, which is great because everyone can be like, oh, look at the great colours as you're inside, but I really wanted to photograph it, so both nights I was kind of excusing myself halfway through dinner and like rushing off to the little pods to take photos. It was I wasn't being rude because everyone kind of gave me permission, but it was just a bit funny that they kept scheduling dinner for sunset.
Yeah.
And then so moving on to day 3.
Now, I think you said to me day 3 is an optional day.
It is an optional day. Why you would stay at the lodge for the whole day is beyond me.
It just seems like a waste of money and time, like while you're there. I mean, I guess if you wanted to have a big rest, you could just do it and just look out and enjoy the views. But I mean...
There's no like sidewalks that you can do. And because you kind of have to have the guides there to point you in the right direction. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. And the spa treatments, there's only 4 or 5 of them that are half an hour each. So it's not like you can do a half-day spa while everyone's gone. It's a bit weird. But we did have one guy stay back.
He turned back, unfortunately. He had some injuries that sort of flared up. So he chose to stay back at the lodge and have some relaxation.
So day 3 was the Munro Hut to Cape Pillar, which is the first actual cape you get to see on the 3 capes.
On day 3.
On day 3. So this involved a lot of cliff walking and some really, really spectacular views out towards Tasman Island and the lighthouse there. And at 14 Ks was, the longest day so far. And it was an out and back. So you there was no real rush to get out there. And then it was kind of a leisurely walk back as well. Yeah,
and it also means if you know it is too much for you, you can turn back and sort of go back when you've sort of reached your limit, which is also good for people who might need to do that.
But the best scenery is at the end, so it is worth going all the way to the end. And it doesn't really start out kind of thinking this is like the wow day, because you're kind of walking through a little bit of dry forest, and then there's that really long boardwalk section, and this is where the names of everything gets really kind of funky.
Is that the one with the snake?
Oh yeah, I saw a nope rope as we were walking up. I think it was a
tiger snake.
Tiger snake, and I was looking at something else, and then I saw this slithering black mass, and it just kind of wandered off at its own pace into the bush, and I think you saw it as well.
Just as it disappeared.
Yeah, but no one else did, and same with the second one that we saw on the way back. But yeah, kind of near Corruption Gully. That's what I'm thinking of. There's a really long boardwalk section, and you're on kind of a she-oak hill, and that's where Sex and the Cape comes from, because the she-oaks, there's the male and the females, and the male, I want to say, has these kind of points going up, and you thought that it looked like a whole lot of dildos.
Well, I personally did. I thought the Sex and the Cape was more reference of that reproduction aspect of it.
Yeah, the public art aspect is quite funny. But yeah, the guides were there, and I'm sure if you had the book, it told you exactly what was going on with that piece.
Got to trust the Tasmanians to be risque with their art.
Yeah, and it kind of it winds its way along, and then the first real kind of wow cliff came, and you didn't really want to get too far or too close to it.
There's just no protection, I guess, which I guess is part of the appeal. You know, it's literally you're standing on a cliff face and one wrong step and you're gone. And on really windy days, it would definitely be very dangerous. There was hardly any wind. We were very lucky with the time that we went, but it's a little bit daunting. But even one of our guides says that, you know, one time she'd laid on her belly and she'd crawled forward right to the edge so she could look over, and it was amazing. And she said, you know, if you want to do that, you could do that too. But no. Not for me. And I was just like, Mark, don't get too close.
Yeah, this was the day where that was the phrase. It was, don't get too close. What are you doing? Come back. But yeah, it was really cool because it's just like a giant chasm, and you're looking down, I don't know, 100, 150 metres straight down to the ocean.
And it's that classic Tasmanian dolerite with the pillars and...
It's very, very different landscapes that we get in WA. Although it was quite similar to the Gap area around Albany, I thought, because I remember going there on a Year 7 camp, and we had the same thing where you would crawl out on your belly and someone would have your ankles and you look down, and yeah, it was really cool. But obviously this is that on steroids.
Yeah.
And then moving on from there, this is where it kind of gets really, really cool, because you're walking on these like hand-cut paths on the cliffs, and every now and then you'll get like a different view, and you'll see another cliff or another little island. And all throughout, we just kept looking for whales, because it was about that time of the year where you might get a few stragglers. Yeah, and there's, again, lots of little spots that you can stop, and there's some seats and public art, and it's just a really, really cool day. And we had probably the most perfect day for it. There was no wind, it was sunny, there was a few clouds in the sky, and you could hear what was going on 100 odd metres below. Yeah,
the crashing of the waves. And it was really great in that you'd be wandering through this forest, and then there'd be these little openings out to the cliffs where you could have these amazing views. So in a way, it kind of kept it hidden, and then you get that wow moment, which was really, really cool. Particularly looking over the island with the lighthouse.
Yeah, Tasman Island.
Tasman Island, yeah. Which had some quite sad stories attached to it, to do with the lighthouse keeper's daughter. And
yeah, so way back when, you basically had to have all your supplies for 6 months, and there's no way of contacting the outside world, and if anything went wrong, that's it. And what did one of the guys...
They said that because of the risk of infection, if you committed to going out there, they ripped out your teeth so that you didn't get dental issues. So that was, if you committed to living on there for 6 months, you had to commit to no teeth the rest of your life.
But they gave you replacement teeth.
That does not sound like a good deal.
No.
Not even for high pay, which it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the story of the lighthouse keeper's daughter, which was the name of one of the seats that we came across in one of these beautiful openings, was basically that the daughter got very, very sick, and he did try to communicate with Pigeon. But unfortunately, he didn't hear back, and then by the time someone did respond, it was too late, and she unfortunately passed away once she got back to the mainland.
So some interesting stories as you're going along, and it didn't really put a dampener on the day, but it grounded you into what life would have been like.
Yeah, living so remotely, and especially because the island, like, when you're looking at it, it's so high from sea level. It really is just rock and then this little plateau on the top. It does look very magical, but reminds you that there's a price to pay.
And we were there on, as I said, a really quiet day, so you could imagine if the winds were up or there was a storm, it would be quite an experience being out there.
Yeah, definitely. One of the spots that we found was, I just felt you had that moment where you stood there and you kind of felt a bit more connected. And there was another couple doing the public walk who'd stopped there for their morning tea. I thought, we'll come back here on the way back. And when we came back, we just sat and had some moments of reflection and just sort of didn't speak and just absorbed the sound of the ocean and where we were. And it was a really beautiful moment of meditation and reflection.
Mm-hmm. So, the end of the actual walk, there's a couple of options that you can do, and there's a little bit of a meeting point. So one is called the Blade, which we waited until we were coming back to do, but we were at the back of the group, and a few of the guys up the front decided they would rush on, and it was a bit difficult for the guys to keep everyone together. But we had lunch at one of the lookouts, and you got a good view looking out over Tasman Island, and you could see the Blade as well, which is like a 45-degree dolerite just cliff. And
it's the postcard moment of the Three Capes track. I think that's what you see with all the drone footage a lot, is the footage of the Blade jutting out of the water.
Yeah. And then there is another, it's the Chasm lookout, which you kind of go to from lunch, and that was really cool because there was one point where there was a bench, and I was just like, oh, what's that little bit just off track, and it just leads to this little ledge and then just straight down. I was like, come over here and look at this, and you were like, oh no, and then you eventually came over.
Yeah, not too close.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then the actual lookout just looks back towards the Blade and Tasman Island again, more great views, and just a cool spot to be.
Yes, and out on the Blade, that was so does everyone want to do this? And I can't remember I don't think everyone did go to the top of the Blade.
One lady stayed at the junction.
Oh, yes, she did. But at the top, you are very much just perching on a rock, and you have to crawl your way up to that to get that peak spot. And so that was a little bit scary.
You crawled all the way up.
I may have crawled on certain parts, and then realised it was the realisation that I would be fine going up, but coming down when I'm actually looking down, that's the daunting part. The climbing up's not so bad, but I made it in the end.
I mean, it's perfectly safe. It's maybe 4 or 5 meters wide for most of it, and there is a trail cut up. But in the wet, I think it would be quite dangerous.
But they've not overly done it. They've not got like railings everywhere. No. It's quite wild still.
Yeah, so when you get to the top, there's kind of, with the dolerite columns, there's all these... there's all these cracks and fissures and everything. So what you may think is a safe step is not really. And I went to the edge of where I thought I could go, and then you look down into some of them, you're like, well, that's probably, a 20-meter drop, and I don't know if that then falls over into the ocean. And they always advise stay 2 meters away from the cliff, just in case there is a breakage or a slippage or whatever.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few places on there that it's just breathtaking looking down, towards the cliffs and the ocean and the waves breaking. It's worth the trip going up there.
Definitely. And some of those the dolomite bits that jut out from the Dolerite. Sorry.
We're not Commonwealth bankers.
Thinking back to my childhood. The dolerite bits that jut out. One of our guides was telling us that some of them, where they're all different sizes, that the Navy used to actually use them for target practice, and that's why some of them are so differently shaped.
That was Cape Royal. So Cape Royal it's not like the other capes where they all rise up. It's like a little
it's jagged,
juts down and all jagged, and that's because they used to use it for
they used to shoot it.
This is like the 1800s or
going fairly back.
Oh, okay.
For their cannon practice,
but doesn't it just horrify you?
What great environmental values.
And then it's back the way you came for day 3, which is still pretty cool. Like, you get to see it from a different perspective, and as you said, we stopped at another spot where we couldn't before and sat there and reflected. And
because for being on a guided tour, because the guides obviously they were more relaxed about us spreading out, because we knew where we were going essentially on the second day of being at that lodge, so we could do everything at our own pace and relax a bit more and really slow down, and Mark could get those shots that he wanted.
Yeah. So this was a big jump up in kilometres for you guys.
Yes.
But was it worth the, obviously it would be a bit more difficult, but was it worth the effort?
Oh, definitely. And I'd already said to myself, I'm not going to come all this way and not, get those cliff shots. I mean, that's the money shot, isn't it? You want to go up there and feel it and feel on top of the world or on the edge of the world in Tassie. And it was just magical. Yeah, I was glad that I I pushed through. And, having the first couple of days, you kind of realise it helps you know what your limits are as well. So you're like, oh, I can do this. I can make it to the next step. And knowing that there was something delicious waiting for me in a warm shower and everything back at the camp helped a bit too.
Yeah. And I mean, you're only doing 14 kilometres in the day. There was no need to rush. You could probably easily do this in 3 hours if you wanted to, but that's not why you're out there. And we took 6.5 hours. Including lunch, to do the 14Ks. So you're taking your time and you're relaxing and taking photos. And I think we had a few in our group who just wanted to power on, and I just didn't understand that mentality.
Yeah, I think there's a few people who they were seasoned walkers, and I think for them, and maybe it's to do with their age group, they're really interested in the achievement, I guess, of doing the walk. But all we could think was, you got to stop and enjoy the ride. I think they were more interested in achieving it, and maybe a few of them had done Bay of Fires and some of the other Tasmania walks, so they probably weren't as wowed as we were for the first time doing these things.
I don't know, those cliffs look amazing.
They really are.
They are. So for us it was back to Cape Munro Lodge, so we had 2 nights in the same lodge. But for the public walkers, you then go on just past the Four Ways Junction to Redakuna Hut. That's the way you pronounce it. And then we saw that on our 4th day, but that was a really cool hut as well that you could stay at. So what do we have on night 3? I can't remember.
We had curry.
That's right, we had curry, tofu curry.
We did, and every night we did have a beautiful dessert as well.
Yeah.
So
we were well catered. This is what we were paying for.
yes, that and the wine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Day 4, which funny enough is the longest day, which is weird when you think about it, because we have to be picked up and transported back to Hobart, and including the side trip to Cape High, it's 17 kilometres, and there is a mountain at the start of the day that you do have to get up, which was Mount Fortescue.
And that had all the steps, I think, didn't it?
It had a lot of steps. So again, backtrack past the public hut at Munro and then to the Four Ways Junction, and then you take a right, and then that takes you to Redakuna Hut, which we enjoyed quite a lot. I mean, we didn't get to stay there quite a long time, but it looked quite nice, and it was on the edge of an open plain looking towards Mount Fortescue, so it was well positioned, and imagining sunset there would be quite nice. But this was kind of the day where things got away from not away from the guides a bit, but the group was being a bit difficult with pace.
Yeah, I think it was sort of, we felt a bit rushed, I think, was another part of the problem, because we wanted to sort of go at the pace that we had been used to over the past few days, but we did have a deadline to meet as such, to get back at a certain time. So we found that, once we did reach the end, we didn't have any time to enjoy the finish. We had to sort of get straight on the bus and back to Hobart, or back to the lavender farm.
Yeah, but Mount Fortescue, you tackled that very well. I was quite surprised you powered up there.
I survived. And a lot of the steps are made of the dolerite as well. So you've either got the duckwood or the dolerite. Duckboard. You can tell I'm not the seasoned hiker here.
Yeah. But Mount Fortescue introduces you to the temperate rainforest, which I was really looking forward to, and honestly didn't expect from this hike either.
Yes. This is what made me think that I'd been to Tasmania before, because I have family there, and I visited Tahoon, which is a beautiful little privately run, sort of like Valley of the Giants we have here, but their version, and it's very magical and has that moss, and you feel like a fairy could come out any minute and that sort of thing. And when we talked about going to Tasmania, I thought that's what Mark needs to see, and this was the day where he got to see that side of Tasmania, the fairies, and the Lord of the Rings style of it.
And it was beautiful, and walking up one side of the mountain, I was talking to the guide, and I was like, is it like this on the other side? And she's like, no, it kind of that's the leeward side, doesn't really get much rain. And then you're up Mount Fortescue, and then you go back down. I thought it was actually better going down than it was going up, in terms of you get the giant ferns and the moss, and it was quite, as you say, magical.
Yeah, and the big tree ferns, and just seeing the ferns when they're all these giant ferns and they're all still curled up, their fronds, and it just it was really amazing to see.
So we kind of dawdled in that section.
We did.
Quite a lot.
That was where we was our sort of our bringing down of the day, was that we took a bit too long in those areas, but we're only out there once.
Yeah. I think I have way too many photos from that section that I have to whittle down. And then it was kind of it was forest walking up until there was our lunch spot where everyone was waiting. And you got some views out towards Cape Hoy, and there's another little cliff section which was quite cool to kind of drop out of the forest and then be presented with Southern Ocean and giant dolerite cliffs.
And at the lunch spot, when we all sort of caught up, there was like a bit of a weird hook display installation there as well. And then some people peeled off to go do the second cape.
Yeah, so everyone had been waiting there for maybe half an hour, and some had decided to have lunch, and it was basically, this is the time where if you want to do the Cape Hoy side trip, you have to make the decision. And I think at that point you were not going at the best, and you probably thought you couldn't make it in time.
Yeah, I was very conscious of the time frame that I feel like if I'd had more time, I would have been able to do it. But knowing that we had to be back by a certain deadline, I didn't want to sort of risk it and then, be holding anyone back. So I made the decision to not do the side trip, in the effort to sort of, in a way, also preserve the rest of the day. So the rest of it, I could take it at my own pace, do it quite slowly, and not feel the rush. So I was disappointed that I didn't reach the second cape. And there was another person on our trip who had unfortunately got a foot injury, but she was like, I'll just start doing it, then at least I can say I stepped on the cape, even if I didn't make it to the top. She could say she reached it. So there were a few of us who didn't make it up on the last day, because we'd sort of reached our limits, I think, with the past few days.
But I shoveled down my lunch and went off onto the group, and there's a spot where you can drop your pack, so it's just, you got your water bottle and that's it, so it makes it a lot easier. And it is quite spectacular because there are a lot of steps to get down. You go down into a little valley and then back up again, and then down and then back up. So it's a pretty arduous trek, and I think my calves were burning quite a lot after that, because I thought I'd spent a few days going at a slower pace and I didn't want to hold up the group, so I basically powered on as quickly as I could.
Well, my uncle and aunt kept up with you, didn't they?
No, I kind of burnt them off on the first downhill section, which I think they were happy just to go at their own pace as well. But it's so stunning out there, and you are a lot closer at points to the cliff, and there's a giant sinkhole which they don't actually tell you about unless you have the map or the guide, but you're kind of looking at it and you're like, oh yeah, that must go down into the ocean, but I don't think it does. But yeah, it's really cool. And then the actual finishing point at Cape Hoy is a safety barrier. You'll love that, Don. Like a little wooden platform, but it is like, it's justified because it is sloping and then it's straight down.
That's the only safety barrier we had the whole trip.
Yeah, which was good. And then you look down, there's a place called the Totem Pole, which is similar to something at West Cape Howe, where the climbers, it's detached from the actual cliff and they sling a rope over.
Yeah, I've seen that. It looks so cool, but scary.
Just getting down to that point, I would just freak out. I don't think I'd be able to get down there, but you got the climbers that love that. And back the way we came, and it was just beautiful. There was actually a couple had set up a little picnic on one of the little cliff edges. Mm-hmm. They had olives and cheese and everything, because this is actually a day walk that you can do. You park at Fortescue Bay, which is where we finished, and it's a day walk out towards Cape Hoy.
And a lot of people were doing that day walk that day.
Yeah, did pass. Yeah, a lot of people.
A lot of groups, yeah. And then that's sort of our final day. I got to walk from the base of the Cape down to the finishing point down in Fortescue Bay. I basically walked all that on my own, due to the spacing. And it was actually quite nice to have a bit of quiet.
Caris, really?
Yeah, it was nice. Stopped a couple of times. I saw lots of skinks on the way. I was still looking out for the elusive echidna, which we did not see on this trip.
No.
But it was really nice. And there you come to the end, and there's another sort of there's like an end installation like there was at the beginning, which matched it. But they had these abalone shells, giant abalone shells at the base, and it was really pretty. So you could take your finishing shot as well to match your start shot. See how much weight you've lost or put on.
Looked out over Fortescue Beach, which is a really pretty turquoise
beautiful
bay, and filled with, it's kind of like if the Caris forest was on the beach. That's how it kind of looked. Really beautiful.
Yeah, really white. And this is where I got to introduce Mark to the giant Tasmanian seagulls, which, if you're not familiar with, they're about 5 to 6 times the size of the seagull that you see here. They're amazing.
I think you were more impressed than
I think they're really cool.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we didn't actually finish on the beach because everyone was already waiting.
They were good to go.
Yeah, which I kind of felt a bit rushed. I was like, oh, I want to go get some shots of the beach and like have a proper finish. But I kind of ran down to the beach, took a couple of shots, and then went back up to the bus.
Yeah, scared a wallaby in the process.
Yeah. But yeah, and then that was it. That was our last day.
Yeah.
So that's the
three capes.
Yeah.
3 capes.
So overall, if you guys could sum up your opinions of the track and your experience.
Caris, I'll let you go first.
Well, for someone who, again, is not a seasoned hiker and was, to be honest, quite unfit due to the interruptions to my training regime, it was good. It was doable. I mean, it was still a challenge for me, but not something that I couldn't achieve. And likewise, there was some people on our trip who were in their 60s and they found it quite manageable as well. So it's still a challenge for someone. I think, there were parts that even Mark did find a little bit challenging if he'd been doing it at his regular pace, not my super slow pace. But it was worth it for the views of those cliffs that you just you don't get sort of down here. And yeah, definitely has opened my eyes to the possibility of more hiking trips like this in the future.
Oh.
Well, you've got particularly doing it via the lodge walk, I didn't have to carry as much and, the food and all that's all taken care of. So, I mean, it is a high cost and not in everyone's price range, but it was, it made it, for someone who's not as fit, it's a good way to do it.
And Mark?
I enjoyed it. No, I'll have to say I would do this again, but I wouldn't do the lodge walk. I mean, we're only doing it because of the generosity of your aunt and uncle, but to pay the $550 to just do the normal one is well worth it, and I think you get your money's worth, especially if you get the guidebook as well to explain it. But there's just the scenery there was just so varied, and I can't believe that it was that varied. So you go from open plains to dry forest to wet forest to alpine cloud forest
to lakes filled with tadpoles.
Yeah, lakes. Well, there was a tiny tarn on one of the cliffs, and then just the wow moments of Cape Pillar and doing the Blade. I think it was well worth it. And we did get the best weather, I think, for it.
The weather was unheard of for that area. And I think also being lucky to be some of the first, the track's so young. So all the art and all the, the board and everything, it's just so, it's new and fresh. So you are really experiencing the best of it at the moment, yeah.
And it makes you appreciate kind of the money that went into it and the thought process as well, whereas WA, I think that's where we're lacking, is not everything should be a 3 capes, but it has a good range of free hikes, which is the day hikes that you can go in.
There's even the free capes walk, as some people refer to it, where there's a campground and you can do the 2 capes.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. And you can do the lodge walk, which is, again, limited as well. So it's not like you're going to be overcrowded and having to carry tents and worrying about your accommodation.
Our group had 13 people and the max, I think, was 14 with 3 guides.
And then you can do the all expenses paid lodge walk as well, which was run through the Tasmanian Walking Company. And our guide, Lauren, I think was...
Yeah, she was amazing. She was a Tasmanian local, so she had a lot of knowledge, just, even though she was young, a lot of knowledge from her time and obviously was very interested in the wildlife and everything and sharing what Tasmania has to offer, which was really nice.
She was a local because on day 1 she rocked up
in the shortest shorts.
Yeah. I think as you point out, not every hike needs to be the 3 capes, but if you look at their 6 Great Bush Walks, they've got a really good range there. So they've got that, which is probably the most user-friendly. And they've got 3 hut walks that are all very different in terms of difficulty. And then they have 3 non-hut walks that are, different levels of difficulty. So that's a really good mix of trails, whereas I think WA falls a bit behind in terms of this sort of... the suite of trails.
Yeah, I think we have this mentality that if we charge anything, people are going to be shied away from that. And I think that's the opposite. Like, I would pay in WA to do a trail where there's no roads, there's no four-wheel drive tracks.
Yeah.
And you get the views. And I think Fitzgerald River, you could easily do that if you wanted to. And I think that's probably the best candidate to have huts where you fly in everything and fly out, because it's so remote anyway. Sadie. But yeah, I think it's definitely an experience that, if you are really into bushwalking, even if you're not into bushwalking, it's quite manageable, and yeah, it really does show off some of the best scenery in Tassie.
Yep. Awesome. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Caris, for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, you can rate us on iTunes. And if you have any questions or any suggestions for future episodes, email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com. Thank you everyone for listening.